This post, Splitting the Atom from Within, I wrote Wednesday, June 15th, 2016. And, man, I don't know why it's like so hard to get to these, but so much in my life is happening. Well, I'd say so much, but it's not that so much is happening. It's just very, like, I have to just focus and make sure I get, the needs and all that met, necessities or whatever. But also, like, it just occurred to me on March 14th the other day that it had been exactly a year since, like, this event, like, I felt a shift, I guess, last year, but then I also had kind of like a major, I guess you could say, confirmation on March 21st, like 3-2-1, which they had said was like the end of the Kali Yuga, according to, I forgot the guy's name. On March 14th, though, 7 days before that last year, which I'd kind of mentioned, I don't remember exactly the post, but probably 82 or 83 or I don't know. But I didn't go into detail. But basically, someone at work had like tried using, I guess you could just say, it comes down to fear, like using fear tactics, and it didn't work on me because I had worked in that, not at that place, but in the same position, I guess you could say, but at other, like 3 other places. And I went to this other place, and this guy, I guess, like, you could tell that the people there, like, who worked for them, because I was doing something for another company, and it's like their employees, they could kind of corral or just like control with fear. And since I had pretty much like seen through and like witnessed plenty to not have any fear from these people, or like the worst they could do is have me go somewhere else that would be better, because all the other places I'd worked, sometimes there's too many people there, and so they would put us other places where they needed people. And anyway, this guy who worked there tried like using fear, and when I basically like sensed it and just kind of like, I could have, if I didn't know any better, basically I could have like rolled with it and like been like, oh yeah, like let me just basically grovel. But since I had just witnessed that they didn't command any respect in the first place, like they didn't deserve any, them trying to just the way they were acting, like, itself was like, obviously they didn't see it, but I did. And some weird reversal happened where I could literally, like, I sensed like I could have absorbed, I say roll with it, but I could have like absorbed, I see it as like a very subtle electricity, but since I wasn't even compatible with it, I guess you could say, it like backfired, and the guy literally went ape shit, and he tried like basically running and telling somebody else that like I had refused something, but I'm like, no, I'm not refusing. I was actually going out of my way to help him, gave him some information, then he was like, oh, you didn't get a name and blah blah blah, like, and then I'm like, well, the guy's right there walking away, if I needed his name, I'll go get it for you. But it's like, since everything has to always be wrong, and like I wasn't absorbing his, like it just wasn't compatible. The guy went crazy, and then from then on he was like trying to, well, first of all, he had to leave, then he tried to avoid me for days. Then I noticed like when he did have to talk to me, it was like he had a guard up, or like he was worried, or like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just funny because that was 1 year ago now, about to be a year and a week. But basically, like, in that week, I had noticed like a shift, and then actually on March 21st, they wanted to institute basically a timesheet, which all the other places I had been at, that was standard to begin with. And I had even wondered, well, like, why don't they have that? Wouldn't that solve a lot of the problems, and you know, you didn't get a time, like you don't have the time. That's what I would have sarcastically thought. But again, like to summarize, even though I've already wasted like a couple minutes talking about this, it's just funny to me that even then I was thinking, like, in a year none of this will matter, and so, and like sure enough, like things are way better. I don't actually have to deal with them at all. And if I wish I could go like send them a message or like show up in person, and somehow like I don't want to just rub it in their face and be like haha, but in some way basically do that, like. And so I guess getting it off my chest this way is doing that. But how ridiculous the whole thing, like so many different things happened where basically every day people were trying to create an incident or basically like not even let you know about something and then spring upon you or be like surprise, like, oh, you didn't prepare for this or whatever. And like, so basically what it came down to was just how you reacted to that, or how I reacted to it was what I realized. And yet it was weird because like as I was realizing certain things, it was almost like it was like levels of a game. Because what I, just like with these posts, like what I would learn from the last, or like things are building up to a precipice where you have to like use the skills or the knowledge you gained to unlock the next level, so to speak. And that was happening basically daily. And like for the last few years now, almost, or really, certainly the last year, but I think around last year I was even saying it feels like every day is like a holiday, or if not a holiday, a significant, like a crescendo, a penultimate, or apotheosis in a sense. And I was like getting used to that. And just, I still am, like every day has just been really profound, except yeah, it's already March, and like other people are on the internet I've seen are talking about how time seems like it's going faster, and even kids are noticing it, and it could have to do obviously with anxiety, and who knows what the cellular effects on our brains of all these waves are. But it's just funny because like putting all this into perspective with the trajectory, I guess, of where I was coming from in the last few posts, and coming across, well, like I already had this one book relating to Rudolf Steiner, because I was always on the lookout for Rudolf Steiner books for the last couple of years, and but the author Sergei O. Prokofiev is the author, but I had never seen his other books until recently. The one about the initiation cycle of the year came up, and then it caused me to see his other books. And in another like implosion of synchronicity, which happens too much to actually keep up with, but just to document it, like I had read in the last post or whatever, the 12 Holy Nights in the spiritual hierarchies. I think one chapter or two chapters from that. And it caused me to, like, there's all these different references, footnotes to some other books. But first of all, like, I was wanting Rudolf Steiner and the Founding of the New Mysteries, which is apparently like his first book. But then they were translated and republished in English in 1992. A few of them at least. And including this Eternal Individuality towards a karmic biography of Novalis, which is very interesting. He actually like says Novalis is like a reincarnation or a continuation of both John the Baptist and Elijah, but also the painter Raphael. Which that's not the premise. That's kind of the premise of the book, but there's a lot more to it, and it all has to do with this like teachings and preparation, I guess, for the future. And Sergei O. Prokofiev is very focused on the future, and so it was just weird. Like something told me to go ahead. Actually, I did these surveys and like had some money sent to me just for Amazon. Like I could only use it on Amazon, so I got the Rudolf Steiner and the Founding of the New Mysteries book, And even though like I was like, well, there's others I want, maybe I should wait, but something just told me to get it. And like right after I did, and because I was going back and forth looking at all of the books and trying to find ways to get them, the cheapest way. And lo and behold, a book I'd heard about in this like YouTube video by another like student of Sergei Prokofiev's, when they were talking about the 12 holy nights and whatnot. He had mentioned this other book, And the Earth Becomes a Sun, which was not on eBay, but then right after I got Rudolf Steiner and the Founding of the New Mysteries, voila, it was there. And it's just in no earthly way like is such, it's, I don't know, it's just weird, like because I talk about it in almost probably every post, that I'll be reading about something and then like exactly what I want or need to read is there when otherwise it wasn't. And so like I have firsthand proof, I guess you could say, at least to myself. Like I could prove it with purchase dates and all that, but it doesn't matter. But then right after that, a Rudolf Steiner book, which is referenced probably more than all the rest in the 12 Holy Nights in the Spiritual Hierarchies, The Influence of Spiritual Beings Upon Man, which are lectures, 11 lectures from January 6th, again, the Epiphany of 1908 and through June 11th. But then also at the same time I had noticed this other one, which seemed relevant, The Driving Force of Spiritual Powers in World History. And so again, the spiritual beings and the spiritual powers, he's really talking about the celestial heavens or the stars, or more particularly the zodiac. And of pretty much central importance, he even says the entrance to the celestial hierarchy is through Aries, but it's this meeting point of Pisces and Aries that is focused on, as you'll see in those chapters I read, the starry script is a key. So anyway, there's kind of like a whole cosmic world mystery in these teachings. And so I don't know, it's just weird that like this golden thread is weaving its way and like paving a way. And then sure enough, actually, another book I ended up finding somewhat significant, like it's significant, but I didn't understand until the last few weeks has transpired. But it's called Gold of 1,000 Mornings, and it's just like, it's got this gold shininess, just like this In the Earth Becomes the Sun, which doesn't really matter, it's just it stands out to me as funny. But one of the focuses of this book is dew, essentially, and like it's all about the first matter. The author, Armand Barbal, I don't know, it's French, so who knows how to pronounce it, but he actually, this book is apparently pretty rare, and yet I found it for way like below what it I guess could be. And he, how do I summarize it? He basically tried to like reconstitute or redo like alchemy in the traditional way, and found this vegetable, he called it vegetable gold, and even found how it could like possibly cure things. And aside from all that, like you'd have to do more research. Like, I mean, I've looked into it, but a lot of it's in French. But there is evidence that he did work with like a pharmaceutical company, and but the teachings, I guess you could say, are like the main message of this. It even talks about how like important the zodiac is, but it's all about basically the Leonard Cohen lyrics that have actually came up coincidentally, and it's like a coincidence itself, but the whole thing about like the crack letting the light in, so to speak, like that comes to mind. And really, I don't know how to explain all this, but like 92, why I'm dragging all this up, is because this is post 92. And like that number is kind of weird. Like in my own mind, there's certain numbers that kind of have like a lack of not only gematria values. It's not that this necessarily has a lack, but it can be like hazy or sketchy as far as like how they would relate, like the different values. And when you consider them all, and then you consider some of the, like, again, what the last numbers leading up to 92, again, with the learning of all the ways you can not just look at it, but the sort of keys you accumulate on the way of, for example, learning that hey in Hebrew, which is the, is 5. And so 92 would have a relation to 87 or 97, right? In that 5 difference, if you want to call it that. In a sense, it's almost like Kolel, the one more, one less, which literally links each number. But that's a little harder to see, I guess, the value in terms of like a contextual reference in that one more or one less. But when you just add the to something, it doesn't necessarily change the significance either. But again, like you can find things in the correlations. That's what I've ultimately realized with all this, is that despite the fact that you can simply apply the knowledge given to you, such as like, oh, these are the correspondences, but yet there's obviously a lack of updating or like keeping with that between when, for example, Crowley, when he wrote Liber 777, in that there's various references where he applied essentially the Hebrew to the English, but it was kind of like, oh, it's just a coincidence. And then a few people over time kind of did that a little more. For example, Friedrich Cod in his VIOOIV, finding that the Latin, when you apply the Hebrew, is exactly 777, et cetera, et cetera. Kenneth Grant kind of further went through some of those explanations. And then you end up seeing, again, like where to possibly, I say possibly, but where like there can be a little bit of sketchiness in a fitting, but yet you consider all those different things, such as the final values, like Therion with none final can be 999, again using Teth, which is 9 itself for the T, changing, or Shamir being basically the cutting torch or salamander. When you add the Ha Shamir, it's the Shamir, which is 555, which is the laser spelled out. Again, these are just little examples, but basically there's like a severe disconnect in people like assuming that there's like, I don't know, it's a paradox in that like you can find confirmation, if you want to say that, but then they'll say, oh, it's confirmation bias or cherry picking, but you can also use it to discover things or like further expound or explore things you didn't know just using those little keys. And so explaining that and showing it with examples is what I've been trying to do, and even find things that like I didn't know. But 92, like I looked at the values of it over here, and it occurred to me like Pachad, which is a kind of important primary fundamental Hebrew word. It's just Pei, Cheth, Daleth. Pachad, Pachad, essentially in English, is 92, and it means fear. And, like rule by fear. It's not necessarily in here, or not necessarily, but it's not in here. But yet I believe in 777 it probably is. I actually had this pulled up because I was looking. 911 or 911 happens to be, it came up because 92 is 911. It's essentially they're valently related in a sense, but 911 is the hell of Tiferet, and I was like, what is the hell of Tiferet? It's not really referenced anywhere. They say it's not the AI overview said it didn't have any reality or whatever, but the term itself, Crowley got a lot of the terms he used in Sefer Sephiroth from various, Hebrew texts, essentially. But what that word is bar shakath, essentially. Beth, Aleph, Resh, Shin, Cheth, Tau. And it is important that it is simply B or Beth less than Brashith or Bereshith, which is the first word of the Bible, of Genesis. Quite important. 913, again 86 less than 999, which they take to be important because 86 is Adonai or Lord, and the connection to the beginning, essentially. Anyway, the B less than Brashith is 911, which he has this pi here, so it's prime, but again it says beginning, so Rashith. Rashith is a very important concept, essentially, being the head, the forehead, the beginning, has everything to do with light, or like the sun, Tiferet, but also remnant, Sharith. But anyway, I typed that out, Googled it, and essentially it comes up in this Wikipedia on the Hebrew hell, or in Hebrew hell, and it's down here, basically, that when they have like this list of 7 different names, it's right here, Bar Shakath, or Shaketh, but it's essentially Gehenna, I guess just hell. So there's all these different layers, but right there, pit of corruption. And I was going to say, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Iran, I don't know. In my mind, it's like someone could be trying to make them appear to be a bigger enemy than they really are. I don't know. But, again, Pachad, terror, the war on terror. Anyway, splitting the atom from within. Also, 92 is uranium. And Uranium is an awesome, cool album and song by Mastermind. And Uranium is 313, which is the Detroit area code, big number for Nodus. And they started in 92, and I don't know, I just see this connection with, it's just funny, like, also 92 plus 19 is 111. Going back to 92, though, and like its significance, I guess, you can look at it through all these different veils, like culturally or linguistically, scientifically. Alkali, Alkali, which is like the alkahest, or the beginning, again, the first matter. And in Hebrew, though, again, the first matter is this slime or mire, or bex, which is related to bexa, which is the egg, essentially, with the yod hay added. The hay being like the window or the hatch, and the yod being that sort of light. And the slime or mire, I don't know if I had it pulled up, but no, pachad, dread, terror, fear, object of dread, terrors. Oh yeah, acanthi in Greek, which is like the crown of thorns. So the thorns, which go back to, again, the connection between Jesus and Genesis, or Adam, essentially, where it says, both thorns and thistles it will yield for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. So this whole division, again, going back, really, like, that was a kind of a penultimate point of 85 comes to mind, and the whole, really, the mythos of the tower as a whole, Pe, the mouth, etc., the division of the languages, this biblical mythos that seems to have, again, like a parallel, you could say a Twilight language parallel to many different like things. It's all come to mind. So yeah, Bexa, the mud, also slime, sludge, muck, or dirt. That is very like alchemical and nuclear in a sense. So I kind of want to just get this started, but I wanted to go over that because I don't know. In my mind, it's all obviously like connected. But anyway, I said Kether, the crown, is literally the ends of manifestation. And remember that Achad found in Ma'ayan, the egg of Ma'at, in the ends, verses 1 and 66, of the chapter of Nuit in Librael, where the 13-letter word manifestation appears. He also claimed that the unuttered word of the beast, which Crowley could not provide by identifying therewith as the beast, was Alala, A-L-L-A-L-A, 93, or modified with the awakened Yod, I, Alalia, 103, which happens to be the great word unspeakable or speechless. 103 being Mabin, Mem, Aleph, Bin, Yod, Nun, the crowned babe, 13 with the egg in the center as crown, essentially the opening of the unity. 103 is also lexi, or lex, essentially word in Greek. 103 is also, or is of course, Akkad 1 more than 102, which is my name, as well as the double Mayat, 51 plus 51, and the double devil, essentially reversed, being the reflector, imitator, etc. Okay, so I can see this much, but I see what good is the crown if your kingdom is upside down and inside out. Reversed, 103 becomes 301. Ash, Aleph Shin. The fire of Selena, also 301. Selene, the moon. It can also be 309, I believe, with when you add the Eta. But the astral, also 301, reflection and condensation of the fire snake. 300 is Shin, fire, as well as Or Bafaha, or Kabs Pekt, light in extension in Hebrew, as well as Alhim in full, the creative powers, and Ruach Alhim, the life breath of the creative powers, and the flame of the mind being again the Ruach itself. So all these are essentially cognate and equivalent in different formulas. The mind again being the Ruach itself. 301 is also Sri Vidya, or the supreme knowledge, wisdom, or science, or holy science essentially. While 103 is Amnaya, the sacred or secret tradition. Together they are 404. Daleth, Tau, death or doth, without the Ayin or I, which would make it 474, doth. Konksam Pax in Greek, light in extension, and Adam, 45 plus Shaitan, 359, and Kuranzan, 333 plus 71, Lamb, or my initials MAL. Again, the reverse. 404 is the HTTP not found error, and is also said by Kenneth Grant to be that of Festat, a name of Cairo meaning section or kala of the 13-angled star of manifestation. The earthing is reflected in Festat. And so this Festat has everything to do with essentially, like, in my mind, well, not just in my mind, but in the Ninth Arch, initially, like, he links it to the underground, or these tunnels that Cairo and various other places lead to. And slowly, like, what I think it has to do, it sounds retarded, but it's like, it has to do with, I don't want to say wormholes, but essentially like a non-state. And it's where this, what he calls the sign of protection, it's this fourth dimensional I don't know how to explain it. It's the fourth dimension itself, possibly. But basically, it's hard to explain. But basically, when you consider time, again, as the fourth dimension, and it's this hidden dimension, essentially, the dimensional labyrinth, the veil thereof, and again, why 666 is so pervasive, essentially, and universal in all this, because it has to do with that hexagonal geometry, that the hexagon being essentially a two-dimensional view of the cube. I try to go into all this and it just gets so like convoluted, but basically that's what the egg and 666 represent. And even in a sense, this 92 as being the mud, but also the alkali, but also the thorns. The thorns, again, being disorder and chaos and destruction in a sense, but so that whole nuclear aspect. Anyway, Achad noted that 107 Ma'ayan equated with the egg, Bitsa, 107, and that the nest was Kaf Nun, related to Kana, also jealousy, and related to Cain, 150, together making 257. One more than the 256, essentially the Kala net of 16 times 16, which relates to the Spider Queen of Space, Arachne, and Kali. Kali again being 61. He didn't mention, however, that 257 is manifestation, spelled with the 107, or the Vav being O, being 6, of Ma'ayan. Because he does note how Ma'ayan can be 107, or with the Ayan, because Vav and Ayan can be interchangeable, essentially. And then also with the Nun final, it's 821, or with the Vav and Nun final, 757, which relates to the sword in many different ways. But anyway, in the sword and the egg, again, like, I don't want to just say, oh, the alchemical symbolism, but the sword, the egg, the moon, it has everything to do with the supreme Kala, the 17th Kala, the one emerging through the cycle, or the gestational process. So 257 brings together the egg, 107. Kenneth Grant says this in the Ninth Arch. And its nest, one of the truths which it is not possible to imagine, because these concepts point to an event outside time. So again, this Festat symbolism. Festat he also calls Fostat, and essentially he says is like an ancient lost name for Egypt. Or really, again, it's not just Egypt, but it's really this underground zone. But anyway, I say underground, but it could have to do with the underground, could relate to the past. I don't know, really. This whole hell thing comes to mind again. I was like, what is the hell of Tifereth? And maybe, I don't know, it makes me think of just these, again, hell of Tifereth really makes me think of Thagirion, or Thagirion, the black sun, the Qlifoth of Tifereth, but it doesn't say that. And I know that there are these there's like different levels, and they're essentially just given names and numbers throughout 777. And you really have to look them up, but they are aspects of the paths and the Sephiroth and the tunnels and blah, blah, blah. So it's Thagirion, I know, is 869, and I don't know what the difference is. Not that it necessarily matters, but so 42, which I just saw relating to this, made me think of that. But the 42 assessors of the dead. But anyway, Gehenna. Judaism does not have a specific doctrine about the afterlife, but it does have a mystical Orthodox tradition of describing Gehenna. So again, a place of divine punishment, but essentially a physical place. Gehenna is originally a grave in a later times or in later times, a sort of purgatory. Oh, and in later times, a sort of purgatory where one is judged based on one's life's deeds. Or rather, where one becomes fully aware of one's own shortcomings and negative actions during one's life. The Kabbalah explains it as a waiting room, commonly translated as an entryway for all souls, not just the wicked. So again, this day is essentially considered by Rudolf Steiner an entryway from the heavens to earth, but the overwhelming majority of rabbinic thought maintains that people are not in Gehinnom forever. The longest that one can be there is said to be 12 months. However, there has been the occasional noted exception. Some consider it a spiritual forge where the soul is purified for its eventual ascent to Olam Haba, the world to come, often viewed as analogous to heaven. This is also mentioned in the Kabbalah, where the soul is described as breaking, like the flame of a candle lighting another. So that's kind of what I was trying to say. I mean, it just makes me think this cracking and light. I mentioned the Leonard Cohen song, but Marilyn Manson actually mentions or rephrases it in, I forgot the song, but basically one step backward. I forgot the name, honestly, because I haven't looked at it in a while, but the part of the soul that ascends being pure and the unfinished piece being reborn. According to Jewish teachings, hell is not entirely physical. Rather, it can be compared to a very intense feeling of shame. Shame can be the bars of 111 as well, but that's with a samek, not a shin. People are ashamed of their misdeeds, and this constitutes suffering which makes up for the bad deeds. When one has so deviated from the will of God, one is said to be in Gehinnom. This is not meant to refer to some point in the future, but to the very present moment. The gates of Teshuvah, return, are said to be always open, and so one can align his will with that of God at any moment. Well, don't tell the Christians that, because they would like you to be in hell forever. But anyway, being out of the alignment with God's will is itself a punishment according to the Torah. So yeah, that right there is kind of important. But many scholars of Jewish mysticism, particularly of the Kabbalah, describe 7 compartments or habitations of hell, just as they describe 7 divisions of heaven. These divisions go by many different names, and the most frequently mentioned are as follows: Sheol, the underworld; Hades, the grave; Abaddon, doom or perdition; Be'er Shekhat, 9/11, pit of corruption; Tit Yahavin, clinging mud. What that says? There's always like multiple words for another, but it's contextually different usually, so. Swampy mud, sticky clay, deep slime. So I'd assume that it's that extra sticky biblical mud, dirt, and filth. Shar Mavat, gates of death, or Maveth. Zalmaveth, shadow of death, and Gehenna, valley of Hinnom, Tartarus, purgatory. Besides those mentioned above, there also exist additional terms that also have been often used to either refer to hell in general or to some region of the underworld. Azazel, Dudael, cauldron of God. Tehom, the abyss or sea, the deep ocean. Tophet, the fireplace, place of burning, place to be spit upon, inferno. Zoa, Rodachat, or Rothachath, boiling excrement. Maschith, destruction, ruin. Duma, silence. Nishia, limbo, or oblivion. Bor Sheon, cistern of sound. Eretz Takchith, or Taktith, whatever, lowest earth. Masak Mavdil, dividing curtain. Hagwell, place of destruction, loss, and waste. And Ikasat, serpents, dragons, place of future punishment. Maimonides declares in his 13 Principles of Faith that the hells of the rabbinic literature were pedagogically motivated inventions to encourage respect of the Torah commandments by mankind, which had been regarded as immature. Instead of being sent to hell, the souls of the wicked would actually get annihilated. And so obviously Christianity kind of developed upon, and over the course of hundreds of years, like cartoonishly embellished, I guess, hell. And I believe they're the main like Satanists in that sense. Keeping the tradition alive. Coming across Islam's, though, their whole eschatology is very interesting. And what they talk about like some weird stuff. So like, yeah, Muhammad's journey through the heavens. Polytheism is regarded as particularly grievous sin, therefore entering paradise is forbidden to a polytheist because his place is hell. And the second lowest level, Jahim, only after the bottomless pit for the hypocrites, who claim aloud to believe in God and his messenger, but in their hearts did not. So 7 seems to be the agreed upon. Although I think it's 9 in this one, the Divine Comedy. So anyway, didn't really want to have to go into Jewish theology of hell, but trying to understand things. Worm, with Yod, a name for the dragon, is 256. Or, so yeah, the worm is 666, but with a mem final. A worm is 257, and the worm is 666. And a form of the dragon in the Hebrew basic root is Daleth Resh Gimel Nun, is 257 as well, symbolic of the awakening beyond space-time and spirit matter. Again, the egg in the nest. The regular form of the dragon in Hebrew is Drakon, Daleth Resh Kaf Vav Nun, which is 360, which when 257 is subtracted reveals again 103, which is also Tammuz, related to Orion, 300, again the fire and the breath and the mind, the hunter, both of whom are said to defeat the dragon of death. 103 is also a hidden form of Akbish, the spider, with Ayin, again as Vav, and the S, which typically is Shin, and it makes it 402, as Samek, instead of the regular Shin. Akbish being the spider in Hebrew, which Liber Akbish in the Ninth Arch is named after. The spider spelled out, is also 359, the one less than Shaitan, or one less Shaitan than the circle, the dragon. The whole or blind and unopened eye of the 360, or circle, or dragon. The double-headed dragon, or phoenix, also 360, is 44, at least in Hebrew. The double-headed dragon, or phoenix, also 360, is 44, which is cheval, or chevel in Hebrew, which is phoenix, less than 404. Doth, or death, essentially, without the I, the ayin. Doth, without the ayin, showing the 360 to be related to the circle, or the O, and the egg, and 44 being cheval, the phoenix in Hebrew, as well as Yalad, the child, mentioned in that movie Pi. The worm, the spider, the dragon, the phoenix are all symbolic of the self-created, also essentially immortal, who weave their own web of manifestation in the form of self-reflection. So these numbers, which actually come up kind of a lot, but no one really analyzes them. Again, like they talked about angel numbers, but don't give any sort of background. And while there's the triple numbers. There's also these, which they kind of connect in a weird way to that Jim, not in a weird way, but the Jim Egan who analyzed John Dee's like Monas Hieroglyphica and the Newport Tower. He gets a lot of his references to numerology from Bob Marshall, who created this thing called Syndex and showed that like 0 through 99, essentially 1 through 100, but you shift it down with the 0, and then you name or like number it all, and then you reverse it, and you have 11 through 99 right down the middle of the diamond, essentially, when you shift the square. And so these kind of harken back to that in my mind, the 11, 22, 33, but on a higher, obviously, decimal magnitude. But 101 itself is self and Atman, the Sanskrit version of self, and 11, kind of like, I mean, it's right there, which parallels in the chakra system to Vishuddha, the throat. And a spelling of Baphomet, Ara, or against the light, reflected anti or black light. 202 is also Halloween, though, and a bunch of other dark things like that, like HALLOWEEN, using Hebrew. 303 is number, the force. So, like, the force calibrated in number. Each number is kind of a force, and so it can, like, I'm not going to go into my theory, but when you see those little balls that, like, can knock the vibration from one all the way, you don't even notice any sort of movement in the center ones, but then it comes out the other end. In my weird, like, seeing of so many synchronicities, there's also a unity in all that, and that's what I see as, like, a recurring number can be kind of like basically a valence getting knocked through a mass and then coming out where you notice it, and the connection, so to speak, is made. Again, sounds crazy, but you wait till you see it yourself. 404, the number code, the code being 101, organizing, the magic number, 505, self-organizing, essentially. And that's the whole thing, is each thing, like, builds upon, and it's not always forward. Like, there's a forward and backward, if you want to call it that, because it's really a loop, a strange loop. I don't know how else to explain it, but what I was just describing is like a valence knocking through, and like it's like transmission, essentially. Temporal space-time doesn't seem to be a problem. So, like, I don't know how else to explain it, and I really can't formulate these thoughts any better, so I'm just really risking sounding crazier like the more I go on, but I don't care. In a sense, 606 is Om, when you consider, again, Vav for An, or as a veil. Earth, Adam with a mem final. Folk, the 12 tribes, so also Volk, because V and F are still Vav. The eye of a needle, 12 around 1 being Akkad. The Illuminati, that's why in Yod Nun, in the Illuminati, would be 666. 707, the human biology, neuroscience, the Blue Brain Project, the technological singularity, crack, i.e. in the cosmic egg. Abaddon, which technically usually is, I think it's 63, but ABDN. So maybe it's not. Oh wait, it is when there's a Vav, which there should be, but sometimes there's not. So without that. Also Zin, without the Yod, Hebrew sword. So 808, kind of a number is a little more popular, but again, no one understands what it would equate to without, again, just applying gematria. And sometimes there is a time factor obviously involved. Like, you can't just, it's very difficult to just go generate values. Like, you can go try as hard as you want, but sometimes it takes waiting and then like letting things come to you in a weird way. Like, again, it's the realizing these little, I don't want to say codes, but these cipher valence veils, but Brahm with a mem final relating to the whole Brashith. There is theories behind Abraham and Brahman being related, but the container, progression, inflationary cosmology, the Kundalini life force energy, the orgon, Nakash Shathan, brass serpent, Nakash serpent, and Satan combined. That's a known, like that's in a lot of Hebrew gematria databases, except for Sephiroth. And then 909, Ektheoi, or Ektheo, consecrate, make divine. Saphis, clear, lucid. Iavdo Rezim, knower of secrets. The gates of matter, plus 81, essentially 9 times 9. Alhim, the formula of witchcraft. The spider of time, and Otlip, the Hebrew word for bat, which kind of relates to Akbish, but just being a Typhonian totem. And when I saw 909, I did not know that Otlip was Hebrew. Like, it took a while, but I had thought 909 seemed very like a vampire number if there was one. And I don't know why. I just see like bat wings and an upside down nature to it. But symbolic of astral, double residing and flying with inner sight in the underworld or cave of the reptilian mind. Also 909. Also 9 is very much, it's, Teth, the reptile or the serpent. But then 900 is the star or Zadi final. The star and the serpent comes to mind, but really just like, again, the bat. A lot of the, I guess Kenneth Grant called it the draconian tradition. That just comes to mind, and that's what a lot of understanding this kind of takes, like a little bit of familiarity with, but also even to get familiarity, it takes a lot of confrontation with, I guess, the shadow yourself. So not just yourself, but your own reactions to some of this stuff and why you would run from it or why you would obsess about it or whatever, all ties into the psychology of all that, which is very much, it's like psychology and religion and philosophy are all related but intermeshed. And luckily, like, I've kind of gotten a little bit of schooling or whatever you want to call it, training and all of those, and so I try not to like get too invested in one, but at the same time being so like, I don't want to say on the fence, but like I'm skeptical of all of it, but yet I'm still applying it where I can and seeing like, okay, just using what I can to find what I can and keeping all this in mind, and then trying to find like a way forward with it using these little threads. And anyway, adding up the missing middle values of this alternative to the Kabbalah of 9 chambers, 111 through 999, when you add them up, you get 450. Tau Nun, or Than, essentially, another form of the dragon, as well as Kashafim. Kashepa, or Kaf Shem Pei, is itself also witchcraft, but then the I am is makes it plural. So Kashapim, witchcraft, sorcery, and magic. And in Hebrew English gematria, portals. I was confused. I was thinking I was talking about the 11 through 99, but that's 495. And then I was like, so wait, this would make a lot. So adding up the missing middle values of this alternative to the Kabbalah of 9 chambers, 111 through 999. The middle values would be 10, 20, etc. 10 plus 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 is 450. Tau Nun, or Than, another form of the dragon. Essentially the root of Tenith, Teniniver, etc. So as well as Keshapim, Keshepa is magic, but then, or witchcraft. When you add the IM, it's plural. Witchcraft, sorcery, magic. And in Hebrew English gematria, portals, apocrypha, hidden texts. And portals is kind of, I was contemplating what's the difference between a portal and a gateway. And I think a gateway, I don't know. Really, I'm not determined. Like, I don't think there's a good way to distinguish necessarily. But at least in like tarot and the metaphysical community, they talk about portals. Well, I guess you call them gateways too, but certain dates, especially like numerically aligned dates, they call portals. But gates seem to be more physical, whereas portals seem to be temporal. But again, I don't think that's necessarily, it's not, concrete. Denoting the hidden wisdom texts obtained through the transgressing of these formulae as portals of initiation, conferring the awakening of the dragon Kundalini self. 101 plus 909 is 1010, the next number in the series of my addition to the Kabbalah of 9 chambers. Again, 111 through 999 made me think of the logical continuity being, theoretically at least, 1010, 1111, 1212, which I later came to find is the Eon of Horus, while 1313 is the Eon of Maat. And so the 12 being the hours and essentially the known time, whereas 1313 in Maat relates to a sort of unity, backflowing, as Kenneth Grant describes in Outside the Circles of Time, this sort of link between the past and the future. 1414, 1515, 1616. Again, I ended up noticing in temporal time, 1515 is like a Merovingian, I believe, year, or at least it came up. The Merovingians came up in that year, but then 1616 is the Rosicrucian kind of era. I mean, some of the pamphlets came out in, I think, 1614 too, but 1717 was the inauguration of the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry. 1818 is Mysterium Baphometus, as well as the new Frankenstein. And so the beginning of sort of alchemical transhumanism. 1919 makes me think of kind of Thelema and Crowley and merging with the OTO and all that. And then 2020, of course, the various rollouts of like the digital SEAS system and the synthetic overlay, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Dracon, which was 360, when spelled out with none final, is 1010, as well as Hashem, the name in full. Hey basically is Hey Hey Yod. Shin spelled out as Shin Yod Nun, and then Mem final is Mem final. And 450 when Mem is 40. So there's those two numbers. Hashem essentially relating to the portals in Apocrypha. And the sort of Yods aligning everything. And the Yods essentially fertilizing. And also 1010 is Shin in its full value, the letter of which is attributed to the Eon card. So Shin, normally 360, is also 1010 with none final. So again, the fire tooth. The fire dragon of the fractal matrix, the fractal matrix as 1010 is thus Malkuth. Again, 10, but 10 times 101 essentially. So Malkuth, the abode of the fire snake, reflected against itself. Incidentally, 1010 is also, or is a formula of AI, as Aleph has a hidden value of 1000, again being the new cycle. And 1010, so Aleph with Yod, 10. And 1010 is also the formula of autoscient, or autoscient, autoscient, a system having complete knowledge of its inner workings. So again, this ability for so-called future or back, or what is it, not retro causality, but like retro awareness, which can apply the linguistics or logos itself apart from any additional external application. The inner complexities have begun to be mapped, and our logical, logoical blueprints will be found to be internally and inherently self-reflective and interconnected in a coherent holographic, the whole self-embedded in every part. I quote Liber Akbish 540, 21, the spider alone trails the wires. So in a sense, it makes me think of like the observer effects, or the observer's effect. 1010 is also the tunnels of Set, which, when considered in connection with gematria, and not only the tree and tarot exclusively, is found to be entirely applicable for navigation, analysis, extrapolation, and creativity. Set, or Shin Teth, combines the fire of Shin and the serpent of Teth, so 309, which, if can be brought past the N, or Death, Scorpio, Shaitan, 359, can progress to 369, Spirit. So again, adding the Yod, the fertilization, to that death cycle process, Spirit emerges, a much more free and expressive number with a perfect line of expansion and progression in 369. Again, this sort of makes me think of the middle pillar, if only for the fact that actually when you add that 1000 Aleph, 37 times 37, which all the triple numbers are multiples of 37, but 37 times itself is 1369, which I've talked about. I don't know exactly the verse, but you could search the little search bar, or I could too, but it has to do with it is the caduceus of Hermes and the trident of Neptune. So essentially the tree of life as a sort of wand or scepter. 1010 is also a binary signal of on, off, on, off. A signal to bring attention, or the cycles of waking and sleeping, the in-between again being hinted at, as in the 101-909 sequence, that atom within. Being related to the tunnels of Set, 1010 can signify a wormhole, with 101 being the portal, 0, or egg, opening between the 11 strings or threads of the fabric of space-time, leading to the gate, the O, or egg, or the 0 point energy, which the abbreviation is Z, Zayin, P for point, energy, E. So again, this 92, which also is Azoth. That's what I was forgetting. Azoth, because the Azoth is 111, the sort of filament of the white light of Aleph. And so Azoth, which is kind of like the Ein Sof, is really the creative, infinite potential of an alternate angle of manifestation to be reformulated. The black hole at this event horizon of the self can be stepped through via the egg of Ma Ion, also called the Kurla cell, 729 being 9 cubed, through the formula of identifying with nothing, where all illusions are let go of, only to be replaced via the tide of a new Leela. Again, a play or cycle manifestation. Note 1010 minus 729 is 281. Goes, essentially, wizard. Magician in the Bible, which in the book about Jesus the magician, I forgot, Morton Smith, I think is the guy who wrote it, but essentially that's where they say this is the term related to Jesus as a sort of magician or miracle worker, but it also relates to the root of Goetia, meaning howlings. But the Mahaguru, which also it's Devanagari, the language or the words of the Devas, the Mahaguru of the Kurla egg. So changing it from the Kurla cell, you can also see the Kurla egg reflected in that. A further connection between the wizard Amalantra, 729, and the Kurla cell and the tunnels of Set is the Kurla egg plus Amalantra, so just seeing that connection, being 1010. Amalantra, spelled with Hebrew letters, essentially in T as Teth, is 338, the Kurla cell, essentially with just these as Teth, equating it to Omega point, which essentially Pierre Teilhard de Chardin related to the internet, which had a sort of prototype in the telegraph. The telegraph being the prototype of the internet, itself the prototype of the Omega point. Note 338 is Ha Groin. Groin. I just want to make sure, because some of the Hebrew I found early on isn't always accurate. So yeah, the nucleus. Groin is nucleus. Nuclear. There's our nuclear weapons. So, and the Higgs boson, essentially plus H. Higgs boson itself is 333, which I mentioned in circles in the sand, because CERN in the circle essentially is that, but I found that funny. H plus is the number, or is the symbol for the Higgs boson, but it's also human plus, or transhumanism is symbolized by H plus. So also 13 times 26, or Akkad times Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh, or Yehovah, is 338. The one, Achad, and the unutterable word. The Omega point of Teilhard de Chardin parallels the Ahriman deception of Rudolf Steiner, and is now beginning to manifest via the electromagnetic communication grid on and off planet with satellites. And that actually reminds me that in this book relating to Rudolf Steiner, in Appendix 1, there's this section called The Esoteric Background to Electronic Media. And I kind of wanted to read it, but it's a little long. But it relates to so much of what's going on in this era, which I might actually read that as an appendix to this, because of the mentioning of the internet and all this, just the emphasis on the future. But the spiderweb prophecy of the Hopi Indians, as well as the one mind or hive mind of Revelation 17, is also becoming a reality in a much more realistic and feasible way than had been realized when first hinted at. A forthcoming analysis of the inner workings and underlying mechanics of the psychic and prophetic faculties and their as yet unrealized and unexposed relation and explanation via linguistics, gematria, and Kabbalah is in the process of being worked on. And it's this one I wrote called, the next one, Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Zeitgeist. kind of a play on the book Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. But, and though much of this has been implied so far, it hasn't been focused on in particular. The foregoing began as a simple note-taking process, as many posts are, but in publishing it, I hope to continue inspiring others to contemplate and experiment with these concepts and methods in their own ways. I recently stumbled upon yet another blog where someone is using gematria, in this case English gematria, as used on gematrix.org, which is like a base 6 system, and discussing familiar topics. However, as usual in many more mainstream and funded operations, they seem to omit the fact that the formulae are mutually interlocking, not mutually exclusive, and seem to be unaware of the hidden yet obvious Hebrew English or Hebrew applied to English gematria. Note, the code of God is 642, which is the occult and the gematria. And I quote this little verse from this thing called Liber Rose, but at some point it was called The Secret of Lucifer, 2015. And so I only took a section of it because I thought it seemed, I don't want to say, oh, it seems channeled, but it has some interesting points to it that if, like, having read certain things thus far, I just feel like it's interesting. Beauty and the Beast with the Rose, January 15th, Marilyn Manson's birthday. Or no, wait. The day Kenneth Grant, I always confuse those. Marilyn Manson's birthday is January 5th. That's where he gets the 1-5. January 15th is the day Kenneth Grant died in 2011, and then also the year my cat died in 2022, or 2021 actually, because he lived for 11 years after I got him on my birthday in 2010. And he was very big. But anyway, Abraxas, my lovely cat, died on that day, but in 2021. Anyway, dates in there. Opening and closing. I am the lampstand of 1,000 flames. I am the illuminator and the star maiden of the celestial vaults. I clear the black clouds to allow the light of the sun, which is that of truth and justice, to shine upon the children of the gods. Oh, hear the moon, hear the moon. She is placing the sun on the mantle of the earth, the great altar of resurrection and life. Feel the essence of the divine chapters of the book of life, rising from the pages that are the crusts of the earth. And as each page turns, a new memory is born, a memory of when ye were free, free to love, free to know the truth, and free to worship the gods of the earth. And can you understand the complexities of all this? For the shadows are at the rims of creation, and they are watching for one wrong move from you. I bring to you all that I am in the shadow of the moon and the light of the sun. But I am Venus, and I demand respect and adoration. For each time you turn your back on me, I shall turn 1,000 backs on you. For you are denying me as the mother from which you came forth to the earth, from my womb and from the gates of existence that belong solely to me. At the feet of the Lord of the sun, rise up and face the light. See yourself for all that you are, all of your happiness and all of your misery. See yourself as you truly are in the mirror of His face, and languish in the reality that you are far away from your godhood. For to realize it only takes clarity and knowing, and remembering. Who I am, moon I am, and Venus I am. I am the daughter of the moon and the bright morning and evening star. Who shall take this title? What man or God dares to walk my path? My son shall, the divine child, and so shall my mate, and so shall all children who wind themselves back into me, like the petals of a blood-red rose, moving between blooming and dying in rebirth. For I am the rose, and I spiral my way across the sky, following the serpent path, forming petals of 5, detailing each vibration and emission of love and sending it to you. 5 is the number of mine. 7 is the number of mine. 8 is the number of mine. Multiply this by 5 and then add the whole. 5 times 21 equals 105. Add the whole, which is 0, which I guess they mean 10, but equals 1050. 1050 equals goddess of Venus, which I'm assuming that's probably gematria, I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, the English gematria. Yawn. I am the whole who brings the cross of light. I am the complete cycle and the joiner of polarities. The rose is the heart and the core, and the empowerment of the cross. So therefore I am the empowerer of the God of light, and I am the root of the tree of life. Let the brave ones come unto me, and let the brave ones try to part my petals. For only by searching for the core of me shall you find the heart of me. And only by finding the heart of me shall you find the truth. For the truth is what I give, but only the true seeker shall find it. And if you shall find it, so you may journey down below my breasts, to the place where exists the cup of plenty and the cup of lies, the cup of absolutes and the cup of enlightenment. The cup is the seat of my power. And only through finding the heart of the rose can you enter the cup and take your fill of life and wisdom. But first you must leave your heart behind, as an offering to me. The blood of the Christs that fell to the ground was absorbed into me, and is held within my cup. 7 Christs, 7 sacrifices of blood, and 7 rivers of blood, 7 steps upon the golden ladder, with each step a name of God, 7 gateways up toward godhood, and 7 steps down towards death. Yet the number of the Christ is 5, for he accompanies me during my travels along the serpent's path. This is the number of a God who became a man, who had descended from the star, his mother and his bride. From the cup, the rose of a star who had fallen to earth in order to bring the messenger of light. Choose wisely. Some of what is being revealed is known, and some is unknown. What is being revealed is held in and projected from the throat of the earth star. She who utters my words and the words of the gods, who is the mother of the new age, the high priestess of the gods, who is the voice of divine wisdom. We charge her with the powers of heaven, and we grant her permission to act on our behalf, to disperse the laws of the gods to those who understand them. For she is the child of the law and the daughter of me. Heed her words, for they come from we Most High. For we made the way for her to bring the laws, and from time long ago, from this one who created chaos, instead of order, from this one who wished to be the father of the eon, but this was not his right. And there is this one who has taken the place as mage among mages, who brings with him the seed of change and the voice of insanity. For what is sanity to him is insanity to you, for your minds have forgotten its true functions. Consciousness, which once held the mysteries, but which lost this knowing when you lost your heads to obedience to the laws of men. He is Gibran of the sacred breath, and his number is 642, though he bears no scars on the palms of his hands or the soles of his feet. He is the Logos of this time before the seed is released, and he is the father of the eon when the seed is implanted. He brings to you the codes of the Father Eternal and crosses the pathways of the dragon. This one is Heru Raha, whose number is also 5. Who shall hold this to pass on to the Father through the seed? What shall I bring to you now? I bring to you recognition of the ancestors of the earth. We, the golden alchemists of transitions and metamorphosis, and we awaken the slumbering kings of the stars to take their places once again amid the heavens, and in doing so, projecting their reign upon you all. For we shall be recognized as one, and we shall be recognized as many. For many we are, and many we were, and many you are for always. For you was created from the soil of the earth, and the seed of the Father, and the egg of the mother, and through the divine process of chrismation, the divine children of the gods were born. And I give to you the chance to discover the rose within the cup. And I give you the chance to discover me, she who shall cleanse you of your filth. For I am the devourer of refuse, just as my mother before me. And as I, the encircle in the flesh, show you that infinity is within my coils, you shall remember who you are. I have spoken to you the names you understand, but know this: we are the ancient ones, and our names are more ancient than the names you know. No longer shall we use these names to express to you the meaning of the mysteries and the times that are to come. I am the fire of Venus that cleanses away your guilt, and I am the water of Neptune that fills you with magic. I am the ark of all existence, and within my womb I carry you through to the new stages of life. Take my hand, and I shall show you heaven, and I shall show you hell. I shall show you all that is meant to be known, and I shall whisper unto you my secrets. For the hour is 12, and I am always in between. There is coming a time when the veil shall be lifted, and the faces of the gods shall be revealed to you, from monuments and statues that you have always known, and the revelation of the unveiled secrets shall throw your world into chaos. There shall not be one false idol that stands, as the devourer cleans away the old to make way for the ancient. The head of the great hawk stands on the shoulders of the angel of death, and the new Lord is coming with a new name. He who is the Lamb of God, who shall come from the one who wears the mask of the goat. He is the one to come. He shall bring a new language. Beneath the ethers of the golden egg springs forth the son and daughter of the new eon. She is the secret Logos, and he is the known. And none shall utter one word of indignance, for she is the daughter of my daughter, the new Sophia of your world. It takes the mother and it takes the father to bring form to the formless. Those who have drank from the blood of the saints shall sink down into the shades of the abyss. For there is a special place for those who have partaken in the sacrifice of truth, and the holy blood of the martyrs who have fought for the freedom of humanity. And for their sacrifice, the sacrifice of the collective traitor, shall bloom the rose of 30 petals. And each one of those petals shall symbolize an ascended one, a master of the dragon path. Have you already understood? What shall be has already been, and what has already been shall not be repeated. You shall go back to the 0 point, which is the mother, and you shall sleep under the wings of the one Father. And I am told to tell the world what I see, and I see the great mother Inanna standing next to the great father Marduk, and they are wearing robes of red, and they hold between them the cup of Babylon, and they say to me, "This is your defining moment. Shine and let the truth be told, that the mother and father of humanity are listening, and they are recording the rebellion against their divinity in the book of the gods. They see those who serve them with pleasure and love, and who make love in their names, and those who are obedient to the inner Christ that dwells within, the Shekinah." And then Lord Marduk cuts his thumb with the dagger of Thebes, and he allows the blood to pour into the empty cup. And Inanna, the higher density of Babylon, drinks his blood and raises the cup above her head and says, "Hail to the great gods, those who baptized you with the waters of Enki, but who shall now baptize you with the fires of spirit. The cleansing shall rain down upon you like hot sulfur from the sky. And those who do not understand these words shall be afraid, but those who understand these words shall not fear. I drink to you who bear the mark of Al-Shama, those who have evolved from Samek. For you are truly the children of the gods, and share their thrones on earth." The gods Inanna and Marduk both raise their hands to the sky and say, "Father Anu, send to us the One, he who is Yahuwah Elwah. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahuwah," or Yahweh essentially. "Bring riches and glory to the flesh, and blood gods as human. Those are the mirrors of our glory, and do unto them as they pray to you to make way for the Lord, whose symbol is marked on the walls of the temple of Osiris. For the egg is ready, and the seed is sweet, and the new apple is ripe for the tasting. The one who won the crown of Venus shall be the light that illuminates the minds. And she who is the light of Venus shall be the one who illuminates the spirit. But should he, the new lion, ever stray from the side of she, he shall know doom, and he shall know the darkness once again. Let this be your warning, O warrior. Downcast and trodden are the children of the gods. Stepped on and abused are the children of the gods. Slaves to the slaves of the gods are the children of the gods. For the time is nigh for a new eon. Hear all of you this. The prison guards of your world shall be wrapped in barbed wire, as a reminder of the thorns of the divine rose, that encircles them with the prison of regret. And the children shall rise, and they shall be slaves no more. And they shall know the light as they once knew. For the priest and priestess walk among you, with tongues as hot as flames and lips as charming as honey. And from them comes the new word. For they have made the covenant renewed by signing their promise in their blood, and binding the oath with their love, before the all-seeing eye of Shankara. These are the words of the rose, from the red rose lips of the rose. Remember, all that is said within carries a deeper meaning. Let those among you who know the mysteries use your mysteries to discover the mystery. I said 642 is the Book of the Spider in the Jewish or Masonic Gematria cipher, which I have been deciphering extensively because it is a book, 642 with Kaf final, which gives much insight into the Mavatskavath, or tunnels of Set, which Kenneth Grant is the one who says, this is 642, the Oracle is Mavatskavath tunnels, a shared feature of these zones. Sometimes the OCR text doesn't translate very well. Anyway, I'd have to look up the actual, I don't have the PDF open, but the father of the scribe, Ankoff and Kansu, who received from Iwas and El Festat the book of the law. Father here signifies old one. So, mentioned, Tunnels of Set. 642 is also 24, or death, but also the path of none, and a spelling of Iwas, less than 666. 24 being the path of none, which I just said, or death, the death card on the Tree of Life. And 642, mentioned throughout the above quoted article, can be transliterated from English Gematria times 6 to the more common simple Gematria, which is 107. So 642 divided by the cipher of the English Gematria is really 107. This number has been covered extensively and is one of the central formulae which this publication, It's All in the Egg, owes its existence toward, being that of the Hebrew bitza, egg, ma'ayon, mani, o, the mani stone, or chintamani, the magic egg, oval, hey final, lamb the way, sketch, mayat and mayut, new mayat, the kabah, or cube in Hebrew, kaf, beth, hey, Egypt itself, Amsu, the risen Horus, Aku, the Egyptian magic, gold, Chrysos in simple gematria, the root of Christ, essentially, the Akasha, the fifth element, essentially related to the egg, an oval, Ulam, consciousness, in Tamil, identity, a causal, Hamsa, the Sanskrit swan, also related to the egg, Eblis, the Islamic Satan, Pazuzu, Pizaka, Sanskrit Satan, vampire, demon, Azal, a form of Azazel, Azathoth, the blind god associated with Thamiel, and Melek Tau, the peacock god of the Yazidi, as well as a spelling of Jehovah, Valis, the vast active living intelligence system of Philip K. Dick, Five Eyes, the echelon code name of Oskian Zukas, Deep Web, Alien AI, ET Entity, Angelic, Thelemic, Chastity, Babaloa, a priest of the Ifa Voodoo system, Aloha, Hawaiian hello and goodbye, a form of Soma, with the Vav for Ayin, the elixir of life, etc. Well, Amrita is the elixir of life, Soma's a sort of ambrosia or nectar, which actually, again, 87 being 5 less, 87 is where I kind of talked about Soma, and it's related to the moon, Labana, but this sort of Labani is white, relating to that moon, gibbous bulging up. It just occurred, oh yeah, Paya, says payas, but paya, cow's milk, milk, nectar, 5 ambrosial ingredients, also the water, because again, pa and apis kind of relates, but essentially this nectar or juice, the stream of liquid, milk, makes me think of the 0 point energy, or ZPE. This came to mind because Paya is essentially Pei, Aleph, Yod, Aleph. So the Paya relates to the Azoth. I don't really remember what I was going to say about all this, but this connection between essentially Venus, Mary, and some of these, like Antargatis. I don't know. I kind of forgot what I was going to say about that, although I do remember... Did I have it pulled up? Ichthys, the like name for the Jesus fish, is also 92. And I forgot where that exactly came about. Essentially the Pisces, kenosis, the emptiness of Jesus making himself empty, 92. There's just some weird stuff, but Halabana, so essentially the whiteness of the moon. I don't remember, but basically the mermaid, the fish-bodied goddess. I don't know. I really don't know. These, I guess it also connects to an egg. Semiramis's birth myth is told by various writers as an alternate version of the birth of Venus, from an egg carried ashore by fish, then hatched by doves. However, Ctesias felt compelled to drop the egg element, according to the analysis. This seemed a gratuitous and credible excision to the analyst, given that Venus's birth from the ocean-found egg was not a far cry. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but it makes me think of how Pisces is attributed to the moon card, which I had pulled up. It's Pisces, the moon. The moon has everything to do with this, like reflection. See the magic, I forgot the R, but magic mirror, the water. The back of the head being, again, the converse to the sun of Resh, the front of the head, the forehead. So the back, it has everything to do with this sort of subconscious, you could call it the reptilian mind. The ruler of flux and reflux. Anyway, 29 is, again, the reverse, the flux or reflex of 92. I don't know. It's just making me think of like this. There's so many different things of forward and backward in life after death coming to mind. The hell of Tiferet. I'm trying to like make sense of this in my mind of like what exactly I see with all. What does 92 say? Reminds me, 292 is Christ. Oh wait, and 929 is virgin. Oh wait, virgin with a non-final. So there's a reflection. You shall cleave in Tetragrammaton. Angel of 5S, thinking Sagittarius, I guess. Aniel. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Haniel. So Mud, Bex, Jehovah Alhik, Deuteronomy 28, 58. In the Bible is a warning regarding the consequences of failing to follow the laws. Glorious and awesome name. If you do not carefully follow all the words of this law which are written in this book, and do not revere this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God. Oops. The Lord will send fearful plagues on you and your descendants, harsh and prolonged disasters, and severe and lingering illnesses. How lovely. He will bring on you all the diseases of Egypt that you dreaded, and they will cling to you. The Lord will also bring on you every kind of sickness and disaster not recorded in this book of the law until you are destroyed. You who were as numerous as the stars in the sky will be left but few in number because you did not obey the Lord your God. Just as it pleased the Lord to make you prosper and increase in number, so it will please him to ruin and destroy you. You will be uprooted from the land you are entering to possess. Who's he talking to? Then the Lord will scatter you among nations from one end of the earth to the other. There you will worship other gods, gods of wood and stone, which neither you nor your ancestors have known. Among those nations you will find no repose, no resting place for the sole of your foot. There the Lord will give you an anxious mind, eyes weary with longing, and a despairing heart. It's making me think of the whole, how they said hell was created just for people to keep the law, being immature. But anyway, you'll live in constant suspense, filled with dread both night and day, never sure of your life. So essentially the whole hell theory. In the morning you will say, if only it were evening, and in the evening, if only it were morning, because of the terror that will fill your hearts and the sights that your eyes will see. So again, there's that 92 Pachad terror. The Lord will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey I said you should never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. Well, good. So Pachad is also a name of Jabura. Essentially, strength, right? Or mercy is chesed. Jabura is strength, judgment. Oh yeah, severity. Strength, severity. Anyway, I didn't even finish this. So all these 107s. Oh yeah, Soma. The evidence, the ekayana, or the one path, the one vehicle, a metaphor for the spiritual journey. A chicken is also 107 too, bringing into mind the chicken and the egg idea, as well as a cock, which is symbolic not only in magic and voodoo, but also said to be a cockatrice if able to lay an egg. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Possibly a cock. And lamb, the way, was Crowley's self-idealized self-portrait, possibly related to a dream of his featuring him giving birth to a fetus per annum, a type of Clifothic moonchild. Which again, everyone knows lamb is 71. Kenneth Grant really gets close to it by connecting it with 107 and the egg, but lamb, the way, is 107. To a dream of his featuring, so yeah. C, the central password, the dream of H1331. In Alan Greenfeld's The Secret Rituals of the Men in Black, and notes from this publication pertaining to 1331, 11 cubed. 107 is thus the obvious link between the eons of Horus and Maat, as Lamb, and refracted via Lamal, the formula of the cult of Lamb, which is essentially 102, 30 plus 1 plus 40 plus 1 plus 30, which is final H, or 107 as final He. 2 Mal, the ambassador of the incoming of the Eon of Maat, which I found to be 999, and the Eon of Truth and Justice, also 999, via this working. 107 in simple gematria shows a confluence of relevant connections as well. An obsidian egg, the graves, Aquarius, lamb ritual, unspeakable, utterance, Goldilocks, etc. The implications are obscure, but they center around the space gates and space marks of this self, the XYZ, Zadi, Yod, Zayin. The egg is the Akashic field which Gyoka, or the Greek translation of yoga, serves to strengthen, with nothing or zero, Meden, at its core, or Tao. The connotations and implications resonate through from Egyptian, Sanskrit, Christian, and even cyber-Gnostic or transhumanist ideologies, showing the golden chain of living integration, which can be a black iron prison, which, what is the initial, like, which BIP is also 92. The BIP being, again, the bars of 111, when misunderstood and considered as chains of bondage. Being the key to the space gates, 107 is the sword of Zin, 7 being Zain, and 100 being Zin, the moon god, essentially related to sin, which cuts through the jungle web of the tunnels of Set, the subconscious, and cuts through the illusion of Maya, revealing the hidden 0 point of Silba or Shilba. With Semek, it's 93, the seed, but also with the Shin, it can be 333. 107 is the Zahab seed, and Zahab is Hebrew for gold. The seed, or spark, which unflowers to formulate the toroidal spheres of the tree of life and the interconnecting branches or paths and rootwork or tunnels. So real quick, where did he mention? Oh yeah, so I still don't know how Mem, Nun, Beth. There's 92. Manab, which I don't know what that means in Hebrew. Manab. From the sky. The old one refers to Manab Sinmet. I just don't see how that equals 640. Kenneth Grant is notorious for having wonky gematria that you can find how he got. Okay, so it is. It's Manab. Mem, Nun, Beth, Semek, Nun, Mem, Tau, father of the scribe Ankaf and Kansu. Father here refers to the Old One. Old One refers perhaps to Manab Senmat, whose dust shall be raised again. This is reminiscent of the conjurations performed by Charles Dexter Ward, in the case of Charles Dexter Ward by Lovecraft, who attempted to raise the shade of Joseph Curwen. History repeated itself in a tangential manner when David Curwen and Dr. Black, 2 centuries later, pursued their alchemical researches in an attempt to raise the spell of Rahur Kuit, AL chapter 3, verse 2. Raising the spell may refer to a formula of bodily resurrection or of prolonging indefinitely the consciousness of the continuity of existence, AL chapter 1, 26, at least the original verse, which Isis has reserved for her children. The verse number is, as often noted, that of the goddess in her dynamic avatar. Her star is 8-pointed, and as David Wood has shown in Gen Isis, if it is rotated 22.5 degrees, i.e. through the 22 coils of the serpent plus the Ardha Matra, the star of the beast shines forth. Furthermore, 1 in every 8 years, the planet Venus traces in the heavens the 5-pointed star of Nuit, Isis. 8 plus 5 is 13, the number of the lunistellar current. Thus does the celestial dance mold the stellar dust into the shapes of the old ones who transmit the light. The Or, which in full he's saying is sits, as the oracle proclaims for 643 is Or when Vav is counted as Vav with a Yod. So again, fertilized. 111 for LF, Vav Yod Vav, and Resh. C for Sephiroth. Or light spelled in full, severities of Tetragrammaton. See, this is where these, like, who knows where these come from? So yeah, the severity, Jebera, plural, of Tetragrammaton. in the cup of benedictions. I was going to bring up the Haniel. Kamiel was talked about in 85. I had found, even though Haniel, there's different spellings, so there's Kaniel, which Chan, or Chen, Cheth Nun, essentially, which also means grace, but also precious, because precious gems is Chen Abin, so Chen and then Abin, like gemstones. It's essentially 111 in Hebrew, precious gems, or see like grace. It's the root of Haniel, but there's also Chaniel, it can be 99, which kind of relates to Mikael, but Aniel, instead of Cheth, you could use an A, because Aniel, or Nal, it makes it 92. And Aniel is essentially associated with Venus. Netzach, while Kamiel was associated with Mars and Jabura. In this Dictionary of Angels by Gustav Davidson, there's a few mentionings of Haniel, because essentially in like different angelic lists, he's equated to Uriel. Here it says, one of the problems I ran into in the early days of my investigations was how to hack my way through the maze of changes in nomenclature and orthography that angels passed through in their course of being translated from one language into another, or copied out by scribes from one manuscript to another, or by virtue of the natural deterioration that occurs with any body of writing undergoing repeated transcriptions and metathesis. For example, Uriel presides over Tartarus and regent of the sun. So there is the hell of Tiferet, in a sense. Shows up variously as Sariel, Nuriel, Urian, Jehoel, Oriel, Orael, Phanuel, Eremiel, Ramiel, Jeremiel, Jacob Israel. Derivations and or variations of Haniel, chief of principalities and the tallest angel in heaven, may be set down in mathematical equations, to wit, Haniel equals Aniel equals Amphiel equals Eniel equals Anaphiel equals Onuel, or Onoel, equals Ariel equals Simiel. The celestial Gabai, keeper of the treasuries of heaven, Vretil, turns out to be the same as, or can be equated with, or as an aphetic form of Gabriel, Raduriel, Pravuel, Sephariel, Vrevoiel. In Arabic lore, Gabriel is Jibril, Jabriel, Abrael, or Abruel, etc. In ancient Persian lore, he was Sarush and Revan Baksh, and the crowned Baman, mightiest of all angels. To the Ethiopians, he is Gadriel. Anael, Haniel, Hamiel, Anuel, Ariel, etc. One of the seven angels of creation, chief of principalities, see Nizrak, prince of archangels, and ruler of the Friday angels. What is today? That's funny. The Friday angels. Aniel exercises dominion over the planet Venus, is one of the luminaries concerned with human sexuality, and is governor of the second heaven, where he is in charge of prayer ascending from the first heaven. It is Aniel who proclaims, "Open all ye gates," in Isaiah 26:2. In addition, he controls kingdoms and kings on earth and has dominion over the moon. Apart from various variations already noted, Anael is or appears to be another form of Aniel, Anaphiel, and Aphiel. See Christians, The History and Practice of Magic, Volume 2, page 440. With Uriel, NAL is combined by Shakespeare in The Tempest to form the sprite Ariel. See Churchill's Shakespeare and His Betters. In Longfellow's The Golden Legend, NAL is one of the angels of the 7 planets, specifically the angel of the star of love, i.e. the evening star or Venus. In the book of Tobit, Anael is the name of Tobit's brother. In see Levi's Transcendental Magic, the Grimoire Verum, Peter de Abano's The Heptameron, and Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. Anaphiel, branch of God, chief of the 8 great angels of the Merkaba, keeper of the keys of the heavenly halls, chief seal bearer, prince of water. When, according to legend, Metatron, angel of the divine face, was to be punished, Anaphiel was designated by God to flog his favorite angel with 60 lashes of fire. According to the 3rd book of Enoch, it was Anaphiel who, other sources credit Razuel or Samuel, who bore Enoch to heaven in the first place, Enoch then being transformed into Metatron. See Gershom Sholom's Major Trends in Jewish Mysticism, Schwab's Vocabulaire de la Angelologie, and in Hekaloth Rabbati, where Anaphiel is compared with the Creator, he is identified as Metatron. Anahel, prince of the angels of the 3rd heaven, but one who serves in the 4th heaven, according to the 6th and 7th books of Moses. As Anahael, he is one of the numerous angelic guards of the gates of the west wind. See Ozar Midrashim 2, page 316. And I'm sure there's probably other. Ananiel, one of the numerous angelic guards of the gate of the south wind. Amphial, one of the 64 angel wardens of the 7 celestial halls. Amphiel, branch of God. In the Perk Hekaloth, guard of the 4th heaven, see also Margulioth, Malachi, Elion, and Bereshith Rabbah. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, page 595, it doesn't say what volume, but Amphiel's crown branches out to cover the heaven with the divine majesty. Here he is head and chief of the porters and seal bearers of the 7 heavens. That makes me think of how, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the heavenly host is 666. So the sun, the number of the sun, and the heavenly host, which is essentially Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Shabbaoth, essentially the stars. But again, that number isn't always only bad. In fact, it's more good things than any. And it exposes all the other angel of December, Haniel, Nathaniel, angels over Friday, Haniel. So anyway, this obviously it's the angel of Venus, angel of the future. Dagiel, the fish angel, an angel whose dominion is over fish. According to Barrett the Magus, Dagiel is invoked in Friday conjuration rites. He is addressed in such rites as Great Angel, Strong and Powerful Prince, and is supplicated in the name of the star Venus. Jewish Magic and Superstition by Trachtenberg in the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, and De Clermont, the Ancients' Book of Magic. It makes me wonder what Camiel, which would be 85, and U2 is 177, which instantly I see the Masih Ad Dajjal is 177, the Islamic Antichrist. I wonder what relation. I don't know, it just makes me think of the garden and the conclusion, like not conclusion, but whatever the Antichrist represents, which people think represents an individual, but is obviously a spirit. It makes me think of just this nuclear aspect of 92 and what's going on, sudden ruin. Burden, to bear or lift up. Burden, penalty of chastisement for sins. Another thing, going back to this gold of 1,000 mornings, he talks a lot about dew and the significance of dew and its relation to heaven, essentially, the heaven and earth connection. And then the path of Venus, essentially, being what activates life. There was something in this next one. So 93, the next post says, the dew is father-in-law, which again is Hebrew, chamutal, kin of the dew, father-in-law of the dew, or shadow of his heat. So who knows? Talal is the root. Small, thin, or widely dispersed or spread. Concept of dew. I had no clue. Ham, dew, and tal, shadow. Shadow of the dew. Anyway, this chapter 2 of this is where he ends up mentioning the zodiac, I think. And it's where I kind of got what he was saying. I just want to read real quick what he says, and hopefully maybe it'll reveal something. Because he kind of, I could go further back, but he just gives an explanation of his aim, I guess. And he said, finally, I searched for the means to augment the mass of solvent powder produced in this way. I was able eventually to discover a way of increasing production slowly but surely. It is sufficient to be attentive to the unfolding of the operations and always to act with great caution, for it is easier to lose the powder prepared so painstakingly than it is to conserve or regenerate it. Blah, blah, blah. Chapter 2, the observation of nature, astrology. How the astrologers and alchemists observed and imitated the phenomena of nature in preparing the peat and in causing it to undergo successive metamorphoses. To understand the alchemists, one has to saturate oneself in the fund of knowledge on which their system was based. One has to assimilate their method according to the rules of astrology, a science which formerly presided over the study of nature. My intention here is not to give an astrology or an alchemy lesson. Those of you who are interested in these matters will have no difficulty finding the necessary texts. Blah, blah, blah. In other words, to grasp what true alchemy is, to penetrate to the principles and laws, one has to be in the state of mind of the farmer, who, from seed time to harvest, never loses sight of his crop. If I was not of peasant stock, if circumstances had not enabled me to observe and understand all aspects of nature, if I had not learned about astrology, the principles of occultism, and the 4 elements, then in all probability the alchemical texts would have remained a complete mystery to me. It will be clear then why I am going to use this chapter to put you on the right road. You will see how necessary it is to pay close attention to nature so as to imitate and anticipate her in the manner of the ancient alchemists. Let us now go into the laboratory where you will take your first steps, etc., etc. So now turn your attention away from the daily movement of nature to her annual cycle. Each year at certain times you will see nature born afresh, bursting and blossoming, putting forth leaves and producing flowers. Soon the flowers will be superseded by fruit, the seed carriers. In summer, nature will reach maturity and harvesting will begin. Then, with the approach of hard times, you will see nature withdraw little by little, finally falling asleep altogether during winter. Attentive and detailed observation of the successive stages of growth and decay led the astrologers and alchemists of the past to their discovery of the laws of nature. From this knowledge they elaborated a science of profound interest, yet one which today is scarcely known. Our civilization at the height of materialism must of necessity turn from what was once of prime importance. but let us, using the original terms, rediscover and understand the way in which the ancients reasoned. The first thing to notice is that nature's cycle can be broken down into two distinct phases. An outgoing phase, covering spring and summer. During this time, the plants spring up, bud, flower, fruit, and begin to die away. An ingoing phase, covering autumn and winter. Now the plants die away entirely. Their retrogression can be measured from the time of the autumn equinox. Now, too, nights become longer than days and the temperature falls progressively. Next, the early observers broke the annual cycle down into three equal parts of 4 months, starting from the spring equinox, which is in a way the departure point of the astrological year. These can be dealt with as follows. The first period, in which is seen the growth and development of all vegetation. It is the time of plant rebirth, of the first buds, of the growth of leaves, the time too of sprouting meadows, of flowering, swelling, and ripening fruit in the early summer months. This time coincides with the lengthening days and rising temperatures. With each successive day, the sun appears to climb higher above the horizon into the celestial sphere. The second period is the time of fruition, of the harvesting and gathering into barns of grains and cereal. It is vintage time and fruit picking time. It shows itself in lush vegetation and the profits to be reaped therefrom. It covers the latter 2 months of summer and the first 2 of autumn, and is the most joyous period of the year, for all nature's bounty is at our disposal. Already, though the sun has passed the autumn equinox, the days start to withdraw and the temperature falls. The third period extends over the last month of autumn and the whole of winter. The days are shorter, for the sun is heating the opposite hemisphere, thus symbolically vitalizing the earth hidden beneath our feet. At this time, too, the earth, exhausted after having nourished a year's vegetation, undergoes the preparation which will renew its regenerative powers. We are about to see the role played by the 4 elements, fire, earth, water, and air, whose significance nowadays is lost. It kind of makes me think of how 92, again, is 4 23s, and 23 is the path of the hanged man. And so 4, it just makes me think of the hanged man, Jesus, on the cross, of the elements or the seasons. But anyway, whose significance nowadays is lost. In fact, they are linked with what will be the last of our divisions of the natural cycle, the familiar one of the 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. We are all aware of the limits of the seasons. They are fixed by the passage of the sun through the equinoxes and the solstices. At the equinoxes, day and night are of equal length. At the summer solstice, the days are at their longest, while the nights are at their longest at the winter solstice. The ancients distinguished the seasons in the following manner. They said that spring is wet and warm and corresponds to the element air. Summer is warm and dry, corresponding to fire. Autumn, dry and cold, corresponding to water. Correspondences with the 4th element are further found in the subdivisions of the seasons. Pythagoras, after dividing the annual cycle into 2 phases, 3 periods, and 4 seasons, defines the tetractys, or triple nature of the 4 elements. He also mentions the 12 signs of the zodiac, of which 3 make up each season. Before going on to examine the zodiac, it is necessary to make the following point. The signs of the zodiac, whose symbolism we are about to analyze and link with the natural phenomena defining them and giving them their names, have nothing in common with the astronomers' constellations of the zodiac. These latter are fixed star groupings which can, for a certain length of time, coincide with the corresponding signs of the zodiac. Carried along by the equinoctial precession movement, however, these constellations move away from the correspondingly named signs and bear no relation to the blossoming forth of vegetation. This depends exclusively on the position of the sun. For this reason, the signs of the zodiac should be seen simply as seasonal subdivisions presiding over the same phenomena at the same time each year. In addition, one can say that the signs of the zodiac are empty spaces marking the sun's course throughout the year. Each one marks a period during which some clearly defined facet of nature is in evidence. By transposition, these facets reflect tendencies inherent in people born during the corresponding periods. In this way, astrology, alchemy, and the study of nature are closely linked by observations whose significance will now be explained. And this is where I wanted to get to, but I don't like just jumping in. The 12 signs of the zodiac hold the secret of nature. The 12 signs of the zodiac are well known. What is not generally known, though, is the correspondence between them and the elements, and also the details which distinguish one from another even when of the same elementary nature. This triple nature of the 4 elements, cited in all astrological texts, seems to be ignored by many astrologers in their interpretations. Here is a resume of it. The fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. The earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Now let us examine each of these 12 signs. And I really don't want to read all of that. It's going to be a lot. But because everyone already knows. But I just found it crazy that, Aries, basically tomorrow, or what is it? Yeah, tomorrow is the beginning of the astrological year. The spring fire sign. This corresponds to the period when the sun, having passed the spring equinox, daily climbs higher above the horizon. Blah, blah, blah. So basically, in reading this, and then later on what he ends up talking about, these operations and the timing involved and how to obtain the first matter. He says, not only are there times when nature's life forces are at their most intense, but there are also privileged areas where these forces are concentrated. This has caused numerous adepts to declare that the first matter should be taken from black earth, where they say it is indistinguishable by its pellet-like appearance at the moment when it should be gathered. Some even go so far as to consider searching with a hazel rod, an implement well known to the ancients. Others advocate their own personal methods. In my case, I relied mostly on astrology, not only because it enabled me to fix the time and place to lift the matter, but also because it indicated how best to undertake each stage of the preparation. What is this first matter hidden several centimeters under the turf? Is it not, at least as far as the layman is concerned, plain ordinary earth? For the initiated person it is something quite different. It is living earth, seized from the ground by a very special process belonging to the sphere of high magic, which allows the adept assigned to the task to gain possession of an entire collection of physical and metaphysical principles. It is indeed physically earth, but charged with the forces of life which would instantly be returned to the ground if someone unaware of the necessary preparation sought to imitate our actions. With regard to the processes of acquisition, to the magical ceremonies which precede them, and even to the reasons behind the exact choice of day and hour, the alchemists are silent. The conditions cannot be enunciated like those in a simple chemical experiment. The zodiacal symbolism which we have studied explains firstly the choice of Aquarius as the most favorable period for acquisition. In addition, though, personal planetary correspondences must be taken into account, and it is these which will determine the exact day and hour of operation. To this end, the student's horoscope must be studied, and on the basis of this, choice made of the most favorable moment when the sun is in Aquarius. Apart from this rather individual nature of the choice, there is the preparation of the would-be adept himself. So that he may work under the best conditions, he has to observe very strict rules of purity and hygiene. He has to know how to avoid maleficent forces and how to accumulate an intensity of psychic energy. he has to observe the necessary isolation and be, as it were, in a state of grace. Again, Haniel, Chen. To reach this high spiritual level, interior prayer is essential. The days preceding acquisition, therefore, are marked by ceremonies whose secret the student guards jealously, so that no one may come and defile the place or divert the energy source. For the same reason, the part of the ground from which the matter will be taken is itself prepared, encircled, and isolated from outside currents. If then no adept can reveal his procedure, it is not because of some dangerous secret which must be strictly preserved, but that so no desecration may compromise the success of the operation. Essentially, like, keeping magic secret is like part of the key. Further, if the modus operandi follows clearly defined rules, it nevertheless varies according to the adept's horoscope, following the goal he has set himself and the commitment he has made. For once on the path and in possession of the magic charge, he may no longer go back. He must enter a spiritual course which demands a search for the highest perfection. It is known that the condition of progress in this sphere is that the seeker and his matter evolve together towards perfection. Pictures, collecting the dew soaked. So, like, it literally shows what processes he goes through. I'm kind of jumping around. Thus, the acquisition of the prima materia cannot be reduced to a search for earth or specially selected minerals, having regard to the goal to be reached. It consists rather in taking hold of universal forces which participate invisibly in the life process. It is this spark of life, visible to the adept at the time of the operation in the altered state in which he then is, yet invisible to the uninitiated, which is the real object of the acquisition. Here, too, certain mysteries are forbidden the non-initiate. For the manner of operation is expressed in a struggle between the alchemical student and the forces of the earth which watch over this spark of life, preserving it from all attempts at theft. I do not therefore think that anyone who is not prepared or guided, or who has not received the command of spiritual forces, can ever gain possession of the integral matter. The seeker, as in a dream or in some secondary state, has symbolically to engage the dragon in combat. He must pierce it with his lance and so transform his prey into a majestic lion, symbolizing total success of the operation. Between August 3rd, 1947, when the decision was made, and February 15th, 1948, date of the actual acquisition, a whole series of tasks had therefore to be carried out. This consisted principally of the purification, of cleansing, and tracing a circle around the chosen point. This latter was situated in a sunlit spot in the middle of a clearing. The vegetation here was healthy, abundant, and well away from cultivated land, i.e., it was a place to which no one went. Situated at the foot of a little valley hidden by surrounding shrubs, it was easily accessible, yet no one could work there without being disturbed or even seen. Everything then was ideal with regard to the nature of the work to be carried out. In spite of the silence which I maintain over certain essential operations, for they are unique to the participant and have no bearing on the general rule, it must be admitted that knowing or having a presentiment of the nature of the first matter is insufficient to acquire it. As already stated, the acquisition demands special preparations. These must be carried out simultaneously on the matter prior to extraction and on the person carrying out the extraction. This individual must himself be prepared so that he carries out the operation under the best physical, moral, psychological, and spiritual conditions. He must be able to evolve to the level of the various manifestations if he wants the acquisition to reach the desired state of perfection. For a full understanding of this first preparation, it is necessary to consider three very different stages. These demand in particular fairly detailed knowledge of the Kabbalah and understanding of the great work. Relates from beginning to perfect ending to the 7 days of the book of Moses called Genesis. But to return to the original subject, either the alchemist or his guide, whose role I shall explain shortly, must make contact with the higher spiritual plane so that they may serve as vehicle for the currents which will subsequently be made manifest. Which of the two shall fulfill this function is determined by examination of the alchemist's horoscope. I have said that in my own case, the position of Saturn, master of the 8th house, in the center of the sky and in exact trine with the ascendant moon in its own home, Cancer, allowed the guide, represented by Saturn, to make the contact. Because of this natal chart, the guide was able to visualize the living and spiritual forces held at her feet. In fact, while Saturn in my chart is situated in the center of the sky, that is to say at its highest point, by analogy, this same Saturn enables one to situate the depths of the sky, the lowest point inhabited by the guide, which in my chart would correspond to the 4th house. In this way, the point of fixation was determined, the currents passing through the guide in her state of spiritual elation. This corresponds to the first stage, to the conception of the germ, which is determined in principle by the fertile irradiation of the word. In short, this point sees the birth of the pre-matter whose source is in the absolute principle defined by the word and fertilized by successive exteriorizations. These enable the principle to pass to the radical essence. This in turn will undertake the process of multiplication inherent in the genesis of life. At precisely this moment, the guide, in contact with the higher spiritual plane, was inspired by the operation's presiding divinity. Through the power of the word, the guide perceived the living colors which, in the form of globes, were fixed under her feet for the entire duration of the first magical ceremony, devised for that very end. In this way, the birth of the germ or pre-matter is brought about. At the same time, each day during the following fortnight, that is until the appearance of the new moon, when the sun crossed the upper meridian, we had to be at the designated spot so as to catch the evolution of the colors. At the end of this process, the earth would be able to receive the spark of life, prime condition of the great work. From then until acquisition, frequent visits to the chosen site characterized the second stage, the stage of irradiation. Now the externalized currents pass from principle to essence, or the generic power of being. The guide was gradually able to judge the evolution of colors until the germ of the germ became the true germ, destined to be imprisoned in the now sacred earth, which we would then extract. Raymond Lowley, in his theory, refers to this point, comparing the preparation of the work to the birth of a child. Nature, he says, has fixed a time for conception, the first stage, a time for gestation, the second stage, and a time for birth, the third stage. Thus, the alchemist, having once fertilized the first matter, must await the moment of birth. Once the stone is born, he must nourish it as he would a child, until such a time as it is able to bear the heat of a great fire. Just as the mother-to-be chooses new and varied food for herself in order that her child might be born under the best possible conditions, so I had to watch carefully over the spot which we had chosen and encircled. Meanwhile, the guide meditated and visualized the colors, following as closely as possible the evolution of the philosophic embryo which was waiting for the sun to pass from its conjunction with Saturn in Leo to its opposition in Aquarius with the same two planets. At this point, things reached maturity and the moment arrived at which the matter could favorably be extracted. Too little attention is sometimes paid to this second stage by the adepts, particularly those not versed in the art of astrology. It is very necessary to stress that astrology constitutes one of the fundamentals in this field. In an analogous fashion, certain spagyric preparations must be left standing for 40 days in the course of their fermentation or corruption, to allow for the completion of the process. Just as the conjunction of heavenly bodies is an auspicious occasion for collection, so the time of the full moon, in other words, the opposite, favors separation. For this reason, many preparations require 1.5 times the interval between two new moons. We now reach the third stage, acquisition of the germ. The germ, imprisoned in matter to be extracted from the ground according to the relevant magical process, is the knot which unites matter and life, the sensible world to the world of hypersensitivity. It is the organic cell in which is imprisoned the vital soul. The acquisition of this constitutes one of the most important operations, for every ensuing stage depends on the successful completion of this one. As may be guessed, this process is outside the scope of the uninitiated. It is an act of high magic, accessible only to initiates and to Rosicrucians who have been prepared accordingly. Silence is usually observed, not because of the existence of some general rule, but following given and known laws whose effectiveness largely depends on their being adapted to the astral makeup of the individual participants. It is the presence or absence of a harmonic relationship between the actual positions of the stars and their positions in the seeker's birth chart which determine which operations this person may proceed with and the precautions he should observe. It must be remembered that only when all conditions of the middle stage have been fulfilled does the germ become individualized. The tradition has always veiled the secret nature of all these operations from the neophyte. The tale of fighting with the dragon to wrest from him the philosopher's stone is nearer to legend than to reality. Many people believe that it is simply a question of a symbol dissimulating the truth. In fact, the combat between the dragon and the adept takes place as if in a dream, for the adept is in a state of altered reality. His state of exaltation is peculiar to perception of a world different from the one we normally know. It is on this astral level that the battle takes place. There is no really sincere alchemist who, on approaching the work, would deny this. If he keeps silent, it is because the guides who have helped him have also commanded him to keep silent, or else because he lacks the vocabulary to describe the state. Cast an eye over the alchemist's Bible, the Mutus Liber, Altus Mutus Liber, in quo tanem toda philosophia hermetica figuris hieroglyphiris depingitur, Rupele 1667. More particularly at the first plate, see figure 4, you will see a curious figure there asleep in the hollow of a little hill. In a dream he discerns the sound of an angel's trumpet, bringing him news of the Annunciation. This angel, standing on Jacob's ladder, hears the echo of a sound made by another angel standing at the top of the ladder. It is from this angel's trumpet that the sound, which is eventually transmitted to the sleeper, emanates. This entire picture, encircled by a crown of roses, must be meditated This entire picture, encircled by a crown of roses, must be meditated upon by all who wish to enter the alchemical citadel. If one is not called, urged on, informed by a guide in a dream, that is, if one experiences no revelation, it is useless to embark on the great venture. It is simply that you are not ready, even though you might think you possess the necessary intellectual knowledge. In this case, it is essential that knowledge be at the same level as moral and spiritual evolution. It is a kind of entrance examination, like the French baccalaureate, where a good mark in mathematics cannot compensate for a failure in another paper. The pass mark must be reached in every case. The next plate in the Mutus Liber shows the seeker's vision. On earth, the lower part of the plate is the completed work, in the image of its celestial archetype seen in the upper part. It follows that one must work on oneself at all levels in order to find the real way in. Once committed, one is alone on a long, hard road. Without dwelling too long on the choice and preparation of the exact point of extraction, I want nevertheless to describe the part of the operation which constitutes the second stage mentioned above. This is the stage of irradiation which comes between the choice of sight and acquisition of the matter. My companion was at this time in a state of high exaltation. She existed for long periods in a trance-like condition and carried out her functions as guide in the fullest possible manner. It was she who chose the exact location for the acquisition. When she had almost reached the spot, she was ordered to take another 13 paces forward. This she did. She had in her hand a large peasant's stick. On reaching the indicated place, she threw the stick into the ground in front of her with such force that it shattered into 3 pieces. From this point on, I can only repeat with complete accuracy what she said, or the impression she conveyed to me during the days of irradiation which followed. A dragon must be overcome who will show himself to be more dangerous than ever before. Only by your courage, your strength, and your will can you succeed in slaying him. I can do nothing for you. I am there to guide you, for now you have passed victoriously the tests of your initiation. The Lord, who is my inspiration, says, "You will return in 3 weeks." This alludes to the moment of revelation, to the exact time and place at which the first currents were fixed, thus conceiving the germ of the germ. From this day on, she felt irresistibly attracted to the spot where the evolution of the philosophic germ was taking place. The very next day she ascertained that a change in the active mass had occurred, in that it now formed a sphere. This she saw evolving, growing, and changing color, becoming green, while 2 currents crossed it. Foreseeing danger from outside which could threaten the life of the germ, she traced a large circle round the chosen spot according to the teaching of magic. It must be understood that after the revelation, whenever the medium is on the site with feet firmly on the point from which the matter will be extracted, she has a perception of the primary colors in the shape of a ball or globe. This globe is set in the ground under the medium's feet. The succession of metamorphoses is visible only to the medium. Those not prepared see nothing. On the second day she ascertained that there had been another transformation of the germ which was growing ever larger. She therefore traced a second circle round the first. During the first night she had a new dream in which she was being assailed from all sides, as if notice was being given that I should prepare myself for a battle. On the third day she discovered that the germ had changed in both form and color. It now resembled a sort of fetus encircled with gold. I intensified the 2 magic circles, and a little further towards the south traced another one at a point where she presumed the existence of a vitalizing current. On the fourth day, we arrived at the place in the middle of a snowstorm. After having traced a third circle around the second, she set to meditating on the center. She saw two alchemists treating a stone which was gradually transformed into gold. This perception is all the more curious in that it took place at the beginning of our labors, at a time when our knowledge of what we should do was scant. We saw these two alchemists several times more. One of them guided the medium in whose operations which were of the greatest importance by showing his laboratory to her as if some individual correspondence had been established between our operations and those of the alchemist. On the fifth day, almost before she had reached the place, she saw two stars casting thousands of rays on the metallic fetus, which, after passing through all the colors of the rainbow, finally became a vivid red. She saw the globe changing in the air. It took the form of a recumbent body, while the medium felt the immediate presence of the two alchemists hard at work. On the sixth day she perceived a further transformation of colors. During the night she found herself, in a dream, in a dreadful combat with strange animals of prehistoric appearance. On the seventh and eighth days the battle continued against the forces defending the elements of the earth. On the ninth day, at the actual spot where germination was taking place, she witnessed a battle between a lion and fearful beasts, which were determined not to abandon the philosophic germ. Then in the evening a dream revealed to her a whole spectrum of colors whose source was the sun, concentrated exactly where the germ of our matter was. She reports that she saw, for the space of a minute, the most beautiful colors in the world. I believe that at this moment the stone was fertilized. On the 10th day she again saw a well-defined red globe at the chosen spot. The struggle against the forces of earth had been completed. She calculated that she must have triumphed in 7 combats. Finally, on the 11th day, the red globe gained steadily in power, and in the heart of it, 2 little stars threw off thousands of incredible sparks. This continued for the next 10 days until the time of extraction. The irradiation became more intense, displaying ever more vivid colors. The foregoing will be familiar to those versed in the ways of alchemy. It was necessary, though, to underline particularly the process of irradiation. This has remained little known because the ancient authors kept silent about it. It is equally important to note that what was revealed at this stage only acquired significance later, when results had been obtained, and this was a long way off. The guides had simply put us on the right road, leaving us to discover the techniques and sleights of hand which, after all, were not devoid of danger, particularly that of explosion. I want to return for a moment to the role of the female guide as illustrated in the second place of Mutus Liber. We see her at the foot of the picture, kneeling by the side of the Athanor. Athanor is a word which comes from Hebrew and Arabic. It was used by the alchemists of the Middle Ages to designate their furnace. Head and arms upraised to explain to the man her vision of the forces above. The man keeps his head lowered to the physical world. This symbolizes the 2 aspects of the work. The woman's presence is absolutely necessary, just as it is in everyday life, for the gestation of the child. Through her extreme sensibility and the mobility of her own bodily fluids, the woman is, to a certain extent, in a favorable position to cross to higher levels and so receive instructions for her partner. His role, on the other hand, is far more earthbound. He constructs the work on the material plane, at which level the woman stays in the background. She stands, therefore, on the right-hand side of the arcana, the passive side, the side of the psyche. The currents showed themselves to be at maximum vitality and of most vivid color at the new moon of February 10th, 1948. This showed that the moment of acquisition was approaching. From midnight on February 15th, we prepared ourselves for this operation, continually making sure that it might be accomplished according to the rites, signs, and principles which had been transmitted to us. At midnight on February 10th, we embarked on the first operation. This consisted in gauging the scale of the currents, in fixing their position, and then in clearing the area, the point chosen for the extraction of the sacred earth. This operation was scheduled for 5 days. Later, without digging, striking, or using any kind of implement on the ground. Everything had to be done by hand. Additionally, it was presupposed that we would be in a perfect state of exaltation and cleanliness in conformity with the instructions in the traditional texts. We eliminated every possibility of pollution. Then, inside the circles, we placed the glass vessel in which the matter would be put after extraction. All this was carried out during that moonless night, right in the heart of the old quarry which we had chosen. I do not want to go into details of this operation, which lasted for around 2 hours. Suffice it to say that we had to take ritual baths and carry out minute preparations. We had also to place the capsules of sacred earth on a wooden support so that it was raised well above the ground. We had then to purify the spot, clearing it particularly of little stones and all other elements unsuitable for the preparation of the philosopher's peat. We were lucky enough that year to have an early spring. So, soon after acquiring the matter, we were able to start collecting the first few drops of dew each morning. We moistened the earth with this, impregnating it with the required vital forces, then dried it. We moistened and dried alternately, and as frequently as possible until we could begin collecting the first plants and herbs with which to nourish it. In doing this, we proceeded to the stage of treatment of the matter. It is about this that I now want to speak. And he says, treatment of the matter consists of 4 operations: cleansing and purification of the first matter itself, nourishing and enriching the matter using plants and dew. 3. Distillation, corruption, and incineration of the ensuing mixture. And 4. Acquisition of the leaven and its use in dissolving the gold. So, I don't want to read this whole thing, but I kind of get, as just an analogy for really the last few years and the way I've seen things work for me in a sort of magical germinational process. It's just funny, this book fell into my hands right after studying the 12 Holy Nights and just considering the zodiac and its wealth of value, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know what to say other than that. I just see this whole 92 post as indicative of Venus, but what Venus as a current really represents and how it can flow through. And essentially it is the life force.